This is a Squiz podcast. We're your shortcut to being informed. The weekly wrap is the week in news and what's coming up. I'm Kate Watson.
And I'm Claire Kimball.
Firstly, it's my first weekly wrap back for the year. Thank you to Andrew for stepping into my shoes last week. He did a great job.
He did a great job. We do enjoy working with Andrew. And look, he's terrific. But it's also wonderful to have you here for weekly wrap for our first one for the year.
I've only got about 9 weeks to go until I have this
say
baby.
that.
So let's really enjoy it.
Wow.
To the news, we'll start with the ceasefire agreement between Israel and Gaza. LA fires, of course, is still a big news topic. And understanding the case of Oscar Jenkins as well.
Yeah, so he's the Aussie who was fighting in Ukraine, reportedly killed by Russian forces. There's also a lot of tennis around at the moment. Probably, we'll see a TikTok ban in the US from Sunday. Also the inauguration, the presidential inauguration in the US.
It's all happening. It's all happening here at the Squiz too, Claire. We just sat down with the Prime Minister, so stay tuned and we'll tell you a little bit more about that. Let's get into it. Before we get into it, this episode is brought to you by HubSpot. When all marketers do is put out fires, you burn out fast. With Breeze, HubSpot's collection of AI tools, you can get results without the stress. So marketers, stay cool, and your campaign results get hotter than ever. Visit hubspot.com/marketers to learn more. So we just chatted to the Prime Minister.
It's just Friday. That's kind of what you do when you're a podcaster.
This all happened rather quickly. We invited him to be interviewed a long, long time ago. We got a call this week saying he'd love to do it. He came into the studio. We spent over an hour with him talking to him. That episode will be released next week. Quick debrief. We haven't really had a chance to talk about it ourselves, but quick debrief, Claire. What can people
I
expect?
really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I didn't think I'd enjoy it as much, not because we're talking to a particular person, but it's like a bit stressful.
A bit stressful in interviewing the leader of our nation.
Exactly. No, I thought it was really interesting to hear where his head's at in terms of where he sits in the political spectrum, because I think it's just good to go back to basics and just hear, where are you coming from?
Yeah. Our approach, and I think that's important to outline ahead of it being released next week, is our approach was it's actually not that unusual to interview the Prime Minister. He does interviews every day with media. It's quite, in Australia, Prime Ministers are accessible. However, sitting down for what was an hour and 20-minute conversation and getting into the nuts and bolts of who he is, where he stands on things, what he's thinking about things, we just wanted to give you a really good session with him.
Yeah.
And I think we achieved that.
Yeah.
We haven't heard it back yet. We will do that.
Yes.
We'll do a bit of a recce.
I'm sure it's even better than we're remembering.
Oh boy, who knows? But at the very least, of course, as with everything we do here, it's just about getting you more informed on the guy himself, his values, as you say, and a few of the big topics that we think are important to you. So that is all we can say at this point. It'll be out early next week. We think maybe Tuesday, maybe Wednesday. We'll see how we go.
It's not a debate, I think, is the first and foremost thing to say. I think there's going to be a lot of debating the Prime Minister coming up, whether you're the opposition or whether you're the media. It's a conversation.
Yeah.
And that's really the way that we wanted to have it. It's what we do. We're not here to sort of press and probe and all of that. just tell your story.
Yeah, and we hope we can get Peter Dutton to do the same thing in the coming weeks. Let's leave that though. We're just on a come down. We're like, now let's record weekly wrap.
On to more important things, pineapple on pizza.
I really want to know where you're at on this one because I have no idea.
We were talking before. There's probably not much in my life that you're not across.
Yeah, and I have no idea whether you think pineapple on pizza is a good thing or not. I have no clue, so I'm dying to know.
Yes, emphatic yes.
Okay.
Really down for it. However, a bit of a confession, I'm not really much into pizza.
Which also I didn't know, and I'm flabbergasted.
Just a little tidbit about me.
I love pizza. I'm a no for pineapple. I'm not hugely opinionated about it, but I'd prefer not.
I think you are a bit opinionated about
The more I think about it, the more
I'm
I'm like, that would be so disappointing if I got a pizza with pineapple on
There
it.
you go.
But anyway,
You're
the point
anti.
being, this was in the news this week because a restaurant in England is charging like £100 for a pizza with pineapple because they think that people shouldn't order it. So it's a PR stunt, gone viral. They've done very well. Congratulations
Gone
to them.
global, yeah.
Gone global, and now we know where each of us are at on that. The LA fires are still a huge story, and we'll get into that soon, but I didn't think we could ignore that the biggest story this week is that ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas. It's being called, Claire, fragile, and we'll explain why, but let's run through the numbers first.
Yeah, so the fighting there has been going on for 15 months. It's the deadliest war in that decades-long Israeli-Palestinian conflict. On the Palestinian side, more than 46,500 Palestinians have been killed by Israeli forces. That, of course, is since October 7 in 2023, when that Hamas attack happened on Israel. That is according to the Hamas-run Ministry for Health, just that
You always
proviso
need that, yeah.
always needs to come. There are still 98 hostages being held in Gaza. They're the people who were taken on that October 7 day. It's thought that about roughly half are alive.
They don't really know. When I read that first phase of the ceasefire deal calls for 33 hostages to be released, I was surprised that number seemed low when you look at 98, 33. But those are the numbers. If all 33 are alive, we'll have to wait and see. As I said, we don't know. That group will include women, will include children, men over the age of 50 and men under the age of 50 who are wounded or sick.
Yeah, and it won't happen all at once. The hostages are set to be released gradually through that first phase of the agreement. That begins on the first day, so Sunday, fingers crossed, is the first day of it. It's a 6-week phase 1. In exchange, Israel will release 1,000 Palestinian prisoners. It will withdraw troops from the very densely populated parts of Gaza. That would allow heaps of Palestinians to return to what is left of their homes.
Then we move into phase 2. It's harder and a lot of it is yet to be negotiated. This phase would include the release of all remaining living hostages in Gaza, including male soldiers. Israeli forces would withdraw from the Gaza Strip. However, Israel has said it will not agree to a complete withdrawal until Hamas military and political capabilities are eliminated. This is the sticking point.
It is, and Hamas says that it's not going to hand over the last of the hostages until the Israeli troops are out. So negotiations on that are to start in a couple of weeks' time.
Doesn't end there. Phase 3. So we're in 3 phases. We'll see the return of the remaining bodies of hostages still in Gaza and the start of a major reconstruction in Gaza, of course. The experts say there are decades of rebuilding in front of them there. I mean, that's not hard to imagine when you look at the vision.
Oh, exactly right. And the other sticking point around that is it's not really clear who's paying for that reconstruction.
We wanted to be really clear about the detail of the deal because it is important and it deserves its moment to be properly explained because it's going to move on quite quickly. And we've also been talking about this issue on Weekly Wrap for so long now. We know that you're interested.
Yeah, exactly. And here we are at that ceasefire end of things. It's emerging that in the telling of this, like how this ceasefire agreement came to be, President Joe Biden and President-elect Donald Trump actually work together. They put aside their mutual animosity, is one way of putting how they view each other, to achieve that ceasefire deal. The New York Times called it a remarkable collaboration. And given how diametrically opposed they are, you can understand why.
Yeah, I guess the conversation still is who takes credit and blah, 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 but it seems like a very media does it matter at this point? This is happening. Also involved in getting it across the line were Qatar and Egypt.
Yep, so they have been two nations, of course, in that area that have been very, very involved. Qatar, particularly given it's a US ally and very much part of that region. Egypt being a neighbour of Israel and, of course, of Gaza. I'm going to be searching for some pieces, some written long-form pieces on the weekend to explain
how
exactly how the deal
about.
got done. I think that'll be a cracking read.
Huge, huge things. Before we leave this issue here in Australia, Anthony Albanese, we've talked about already, said he welcomes the ceasefire deal, but it hasn't stopped the issue here of anti-Semitism, of course, being a huge one. As we record, reports are that in the Sydney suburb of Dover Heights, it looks like there's been another anti-Semitic attack overnight. Multiple cars graffitied, 2 set on fire, homes splashed with red paint.
Yep, and what the New South Wales Premier Chris Minns has said, and this is his quote, "This is a disgusting and dangerous act of violence that is the latest example of a rising level of anti-Semitic attacks in our community. Civil society stands united in condemning this flagrant racism."
We'll kick off this section of the podcast talking about the fires in LA, of just an ongoing news story, and they're still burning.
Yeah, as it stands, at least 25 people have died in those 4 fires that have really ravaged Los Angeles. 8 deaths are linked to the Palisades fire, 17 to the Eaton fire. No doubt that'll rise. There are plenty of people who are missing. About 150,000 residents, when you look across Los Angeles County, they're under evacuation orders. There's 700 people who are seeking shelter. So they've lost their homes. They're looking for help.
Somewhere to be.
Yeah.
The scale of this is sort of hard to comprehend. We're definitely in a phase now that includes discussion on what could have been done to prevent it. How did it all start? Arrests have actually been made in connection with the fires already. In my reading of it all, Claire, one grab really stuck out to me. It was from a resident of Pacific Palisades. He said, "The hardest thing at the moment is that the community wants to rally together, but everyone is scattered." And just reflecting back on when we had fires here and, my community that I grew up in, it was that getting together that was super important. And the fact that that can't be done in the same way that would be very, very, very difficult.
I was just going to say, you and plenty of listeners would have very vivid memories of exactly what that feeling was.
You want to be with the people that this has happened to around you.
Yeah.
And I think that just really hit home for me. I was like, that is terribly sad,
Yeah, and certainly from this distance, I listened to a couple of podcasts talking about the issues that they had there, the issues of resourcing the fire authorities there, the issue around, even I think the biggest reservoir of water that was close to the Pacific Palisades fire was offline. Plenty of people saying, we knew that this wind system was coming in. Why wasn't something done to make sure that we were more prepared? Then you get into a conversation about insurance.
Quite detailed because, and, we'll touch on it lightly, but it is part of the discussion, and you would have seen headlines saying, insurance is a big problem and it could affect us, and it's all the flow-on effects.
It's a global thing, yeah.
Over the years, the context is that over the years there's been increasing reluctance by companies to insure some parts of California, or if they do, it's extremely expensive, so it's become unaffordable. On the stats, in 2023, 7 of the 12 largest insurance companies by market share in the state of California paused or restricted issuing new policies. So the reason why this isn't easy to explain is that there are reasons for that, but many of those companies cited climate change as a reason, and the increasing risk of natural disasters.
It's not just necessarily that people have lapsed their insurance policy. If you can't get coverage, what are you going to do?
Lapse, but then even if you can, it's so expensive that you might not be able to access it. So huge conversation about insurance, how to rebuild, whether they can rebuild. This is where this will go from here. There's also some talk about landslides.
Yeah, and all of that danger that comes when an area has such a hit to its environment, a lot of vegetation gone. So, that'll be definitely in our news for a long time to come.
Absolutely. Moving on, you might have heard the name Oscar Jenkins come up a bit in the news. I must confess, I saw it all week, didn't pay a lot of attention, and once I started reading about Oscar Jenkins, it's a fascinating tale. He's an Aussie, a volunteer soldier in Ukraine's eastern Donbass region. He was reportedly captured by Russians last month, so December.
Yeah, exactly. And you can be forgiven for having missed that at that time because it was, I think, the 20th of
late
December.
Towards Christmas.
Yeah, so if you're already sort of clocking off for Christmas, you might have missed that story. Certainly a really interesting guy, but when it comes to this, we don't really know what's happened to him. There's reports that he has been killed by Russian forces. Soldiers who served alongside him believe that he's been executed after he was captured. There's a lot of assumed knowledge, I guess, in this whole situation and how it came to be. But basically there's people from all over the world who have gone to Ukraine to help them fight this war. When you look at the groups that they join, Oscar joined the Legionnaires. It's sort of this fighting group of people who have come across the world and they've decided that the values that they're fighting for are really important to them.
You said to me, isn't it illegal, like as an Australian, to go and fight? And we had a look into that and it's sort of super murky.
Yeah.
It's not something the government wants you to be doing. But this, certainly when you look at the reporting of Oscar and Jenkins in particular, it's a massive grey area when it comes to whether what he's done is legal or not. Regardless, that is what he did. And regardless, he's an Australian that has allegedly been killed overseas by Russians. You don't need any military experience to join these foreign organisations, I guess. And what people may not know is actually 7 Australians are thought to have been killed while fighting for Ukraine since Russia's invasion of the country began in February 2022. The difference here is that Jenkins, if he has in fact been killed, would be the first Australian prisoner of war killed by a foreign power since World War II. So he was actually taken prisoner.
Yeah, it's not like someone who's gone and joined Islamic State and has been killed by a rebel force or executed by a rebel force. We're talking about being, if it is true, executed by a nation. So that is why it is getting so much attention and why the government is very, very involved in all of this. There are these international laws, though, around taking prisoners of war. The Geneva Convention was set up around all of that. The accusation is that Russia has broken international law if in fact they have executed him. What Prime Minister Albanese said this week is if it is true, he would take the strongest possible action. What that is, we're not really sure.
We're not sure, but for example, opposition leader Peter Dutton suggested that might be expelling Russia's ambassador to Australia, and Anthony Albanese has said he's not ruling that out at this point.
Yeah.
So that's that one. Tennis.
Yes, tennis. That's a gear change.
That's a gear change. Dominates the news for a couple of weeks, of course, during the Australian Open. The news stories come and go so quickly. Someone can be the thing for 24 hours and then they're not the thing. You wanted to talk about Destiny Ava. She's an Aussie with a tale for the ages, but then she didn't win. So she's kind of, this is the problem. She's sort of old news, but if you want to go for it if you want to.
Worth clocking her anyway. So, look, I watched that game on Thursday night against Danielle Collins. Collins was in the news quite a bit on Friday morning because the crowd really didn't take to her.
She's kind of provocative.
She was rather provocative. I remember watching it going, holy heck.
And it was close.
Well, the subject line of our newsletter was, you can kiss my ... because she gave the whole gesture to the crowd, like, you can kiss my... Yeah, it was a whole thing. But for Destiny, she put up a really good fight. She was the best in the world when she was 14 years old. She's really struggled, though, to translate that into the big open tournaments. So the fact that she qualified was a whole thing. The fact that she won her first round game was really great. Didn't progress through to the third round, but she really gave it a good crack.
Yeah, I'll put a link to her personal story in your show notes if you want to read about it, because it is worth going deeper on, particularly if you like those tales of people. It's really all about Alex de Minaur now, though, when it comes to the tennis.
We've got rid of all the clutter around Nick Kyrgios,
out,
Thanasi Kokkinakis, all of that. It's the demon.
It's the demon. He plays tonight in his third round match. In what's coming up, it's a big news week next week. Oh, I hate saying that. God, it's just whenever it pops up.
We've fallen back into it, haven't we?
No, what have I done?
It is action-packed.
Yeah, it's action. Is there another way to say it? Oh, we've already talked.
There's an embarrassment of riches of news.
Oh no, it's just a normal news week that's going to be big. I don't know.
I don't know.
We're tired. We just interviewed the Prime Minister. If you haven't.
Let's push on through.
Let's push on through. Obviously that ceasefire deal will continue to dominate the news, and it's actually coming into effect from Sunday. So expect that around a lot. Also on Sunday and into Monday, our time, the TikTok ban in the US is due to come into effect.
So the laws have been passed. Joe Biden signed them off as president. The deadline is on Sunday. Just a quick refresher about all of that. So, of course, TikTok is Chinese owned, and many consider them a security risk, many governments. Our government does too. There's certain restrictions on, it's not just the US. The Biden administration approved the ban last year that unless it was sold to a non-Chinese owner, they would be banned. The deadline for that sale is Sunday.
That hasn't happened.
Transaction hasn't happened yet.
Who knows? I mean, these deals could get done late.
Well, there was a bit, you would have seen a bit of scuttlebutt around. Maybe Elon Musk can buy it.
Oh, I didn't see that.
Yeah. There's a whole thing.
There's a whole thing. Who knows what might happen, and who knows what might have happened by the time you're listening to this.
Yep.
But certainly it's going to be news.
Yep.
Regardless. If you're wondering kind of what it means for people who are using TikTok in the US, actually, by all accounts, what won't happen, it won't just disappear from your device. You just won't be able to download it anymore.
Yeah.
It won't be available on the App Store.
Update it.
Maybe.
I
feel like that's still a bit of a grey area.
Rightio.
I mean, I think they don't really know.
Okay. It is pretty like
weird, what could happen.
Yeah.
If it does happen, it's going to be huge. So
yeah, and there's 170 million Americans that have TikTok as an app on their devices.
It's not even about the use of it. It's about the e-commerce, the commerce of it as well. Like there's businesses that rely on it. It's a whole thing.
Exactly.
If it happens. So it's a watch and see though.
Okay.
Sticking with the US, in the early hours of Tuesday, our time, Donald Trump will officially become the 47th American president.
And speaking of TikTok, the boss, So Chu, is going to attend that.
Oh, there you go.
So that'll be a nice little moment where the cameras can scroll through not just all of the tech billionaires who will be there, of which there will be many.
Who else is going?
Well, so Elon Musk, of course, like he's part of the government, so he's definitely going to be there. There's reports that he's actually going to be seated in the stand. You know, if you remember an inauguration ceremony, it's the president at the front, and there's like a stadium stand behind them, like stadium seating, and then they're facing the crowd. In the stand behind President Trump will be Elon Musk. A sense that Jeff Bezos, of course, the founder of Amazon, and Mark Zuckerberg from Meta, the three of them will be seating together.
There you go. Actually gave the Joe Rogan podcast a listen with the interview with Mark Zuckerberg purely out of interest. It's actually quite interesting. But that wasn't my recommendation this week, but just did give that a try.
I listened to a podcast about that podcast.
Oh,
I need to listen to the actual
That's
podcast.
very meta.
I know. It is very meta, isn't it?
Let's finish this off by saying that it's supposed to be really cold.
An Arctic blast is coming through. It's meant to be the coldest inauguration in 40 years.
I wonder what Ivanka will wear.
Oh, to be honest, that's all I want to know too.
And Michelle Obama, of course, isn't attending.
Not attending.
That's been a bit of a thing this week. But yeah, okay, really, really cold.
Cold, yeah, for sure.
Shifting gears to business, on Thursday, the shareholders of Myer and Premier Investments will vote on a proposal that would see Myer buy Premier Investments' apparel brands division. So we're talking Just Jeans, Dotti, Portman's, Jackie E, and JJ's.
Yep,
that's
Main Street staples.
They're like my shopping.
If you're at the mall, they're all there.
When I was in my 20s, that was like...
Yep,
that's
Peter Alexander for PJs,
okay.
they're all part of that.
Yep.
The deal is worth about $800 million. It's notable because Premier Investments, it's a public company, but it's majority owned by a guy called Solomon Lew, who is a billionaire, and he's got a very long history when it comes to Myer. He was on the board of Coles Myer, as it was 20 years ago. Coles and Myer split up, but he got dumped from that board. There was a disagreement over strategy.
So it's coming all back around.
If you stick around long enough, sometimes these things come all back around. He, over the ensuing period, has really been pushing Myer on its strategy from the outside. He's definitely been throwing rocks into that camp about exactly how it's been run.
There you go. As we get to the end of the week, it'll be all about Australia Day, Australian of the Year functions as well. Australia Day is next Sunday, but there's events leading up to that. There's a lunch in the Great Hall of Parliament House in Canberra. The nominees will attend. We were going to go into who the nominees are, but I think we'll wait till we know who the winner is.
Yeah, next weekly wrap we can do it.
Yeah.
Well, we can foreshadow it because the Australian of the Year will be announced that night.
Oh, yes, that's right. So we've got a whole nother episode for you before then,
Yeah.
of course. Let's leave what's coming up there and move on to recommendations. Didn't get to do my recommendation last week. I've saved it up.
Oh, nice.
I think Saturday Squiz, our email that goes out on a Saturday, had this recommendation
picked this up because you're emphatic.
I really liked this book.
Yes.
So it's called The Wide, Wide Seas. It's the tale of Captain Cook's last voyage. It's by a guy called Hampton Sides, who is renowned for historical nonfiction told in a way that it's easy to digest and really well in a narrative format.
Yeah. It's a good story.
It's a good story.
He's told the story.
He's told the story.
Yeah.
But I was really, really captivated by it, and I learnt a lot about Captain Cook. And it goes into that was obviously the voyage where he was killed, so it goes into the details of how he was brutally slaughtered, in fact, in Hawaii, and all of that. And I highly recommend it as a little history lesson that you actually enjoy.
It's a cracking yarn.
Cracking yarn. It's a cracking yarn.
Knowing the headlines.
Yeah. It's really, really, really good. And I'm going to read more of his now that I know that he's a thing.
That he can tell great stories.
Yeah.
Okay. I've just realised that in talking about what Danielle Collins gestured at the tennis, I'm actually going to say the word now. So I could have said it's us. Yeah. So I'm recommending a Prime movie. It's only about an hour 20. It's called My Old Ass. It's Aubrey Plaza. So if you remember her from Parks and Rec.
Yep.
It's Maisie Stella, who you might know because she was on Nashville. She's a country singer.
Yeah. I mean, me knowing celebrities is
I'm going to show you a clip.
If she's on Nashville, I'll know her face.
Yeah. There's this very beautiful clip of her performing at the CMAs with her sister, and she's only little.
Yeah.
And she's singing a version of a Taylor Swift song, and Taylor Swift's in the front row of
I'm
the
interested
CMAs.
in that. Can that be your recommendation?
It's really cute.
Okay.
It's very cute. Anyway, back to My Old Ass. It's a rom-com. It's got a bit of weight to it. I really enjoyed it. So, yeah, it's a definite weekend movie.
Yeah, I'm 100% there for that. I will let you know what I thought of it next week.
Please.
And tell you if
my review.
I don't know if you'll be able to read my book in a week, but we'll see.
Yeah, no, bring it in.
Great to be back on Weekly Wrap. I reckon that's about it, except to say that, of course, look out for that episode with Anthony Albanese, the Prime Minister of Australia, that we've just recorded. As we said, it'll be out early next week.
And I reckon it's a good opportunity, too, for you to tell any of your people in your orbit. It's just another reason to recommend the Squiz to them. We're going to do this election, as we do everything, nice and calm, really good factual information. We're a pretty special place to find that kind of take on things, so you can plug them in.
News Club, place to go for conversations about the news. That's what it says on the tin.
Exactly right.
Have a great weekend.